us tonight, Captain Michael Cox from the Salvation Army, who will lead us in the invocation, and will follow by the pledge. If you all rise, please.
Thank you, Ms. Vice Mayor Jenny Brock and Commissioners. If you don't mind, I'd like to take just a moment to again say thank you for encouraging your city employees that are coming out Tuesday night to be out there ringing those bells. So we thank you for allowing them to do so and supporting us. We would also encourage anybody else in the Johnson City area that will do the same by going to our registertoring.com and to volunteer to help us again to spread cheer and to spread joy. Let's gather together in invocation. Again, Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for this opportunity to gather together as citizens and as leaders of your community. Heavenly Father, I ask that you'll bless us with wisdom of how we can continue to enrich this beautiful city that you have given us here in Johnson City this evening. Father God, we know we're about to experience an opportunity to announce of a new leader that will continue to guide us into the way that you will have us to be of this great city. And again, we thank you for all that you do for each and every one of us. We ask that you continue to protect us and love us and be with us in all that we do. We pray this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Peterson, first of all, welcome all of our guests who are here in the chambers with us tonight and who are watching on TV and who are also live streaming our meeting tonight. It's wonderful to be able to see your government at work. Our first agenda item, please.
Your first agenda item is selection of a mayor. As you all are familiar, the five of you select from amongst yourselves who will serve as mayor and vice mayor, the first item being the selection of the mayor.
Are there nominations?
Yes, I'd like to, it's a distinct pleasure, place the name of Jenny Brock into nomination to serve as our city's mayor. I've had the opportunity to work with her both as a city commissioner and a planning commissioner, and Johnson City has no more passionate advocate than Jenny Brock, and it will be a distinct pleasure and honor to serve with you if selected as our mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Wise. Are there other nominations?
I move that we close the nominations.
Ms. Jennings, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Commissioner Wise.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Now Mayor Brock. Congratulations.
Our next order of business is to select one of the commissioners as our vice mayor. Are there nominations?
Ms. Brock, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Joe Wise, if he would accept.
Are there other nominations?
Mayor Brock, I wish we could have just co-vice mayor, since we have a couple of people that have an interest in serving in that position, and I certainly think either of these individuals could do a good job, but I also would like to place in nomination Dr. Fowler.
Thank you, gentlemen, for both being willing to step up. Are there any other comments? Okay, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Dr. Fowler.
Commissioner Fowler.
Todd Fowler.
Commissioner Hunter.
Commissioner Wise.
Commissioner Wise.
Commissioner Wise.
And Mayor Brock.
Commissioner Wise.
Okay, Vice Mayor Brock Wise. Congratulations.
Mayor, if we could we take a 5-minute recess to reorganize seats? Keisha needs to get some pictures and give the press an opportunity to get some pictures and perhaps some comments. That way they could make their deadlines. I'm sure they'd be appreciative.
We will adjourn the meeting for about 5 minutes. call the meeting back to order. Mr. Peterson, before we go to the next item, and Commissioners, if y'all would indulge me for just a minute, I'd like to make just a few remarks. I'll try to keep the 6-page down to 3.
It's a very large font.
But first, Commissioners, thank you for your vote of confidence. I'm humbled to serve this great city as a member of this new commission in the role of mayor. As we all know, serving the community as an elected leader is never an individual effort. It's a commitment by the whole family. I want to first and foremost thank my husband, Michael. I didn't know I'd get emotional. Who's eaten many meals by himself when I didn't get home when I said I would. Mostly, Michael, thank you for your honesty and giving me feedback, even when it wasn't what I wanted to hear. And when we decided that I would run for a second term, I realized it was a second term for you too. I thank you and I love you dearly. I also want to thank my daughter Jennifer, who served as my campaign manager, my graphic designer, and the best cheerleader you could ever have. She and her husband Todd had given Michael and me 3 wonderful grandchildren. 2 of them are here tonight, Tess, Tate, and Rocky. It is them who will be in the back of my mind when this commission invests in the future of our city. I want their generation to choose this region to work, live, play, and raise their families. My sisters and are also here tonight for me. They've always been by my side, and I love them dearly as well. And I thank for also my daughter's mother-in-law, Kitty, who's here with us too. I'm so blessed to have this wonderful family. I've been in the elected leadership positions in the city since 2007, first serving on the Johnson City School Board and then on the City Commission in 2013. As the only commission incumbent running in this last election, the voters affirmed that my leadership and the direction of the city was going in the right place. Our challenge on this new commission is to fine-tune that direction and make strategic investments that lay the groundwork and plant the seeds for the future. As we know, the Johnson City Charter well defines our form of government as a as a commission city manager style. The term weak mayor is sometimes used since it's not independently voted for, elected by the voters, but voted for on the commission as we did tonight. I'll never forget a few years ago that my oldest granddaughter called me after a class at Science Hill, and she was very upset. She said, "Gran, our teacher said our mayor is weak." Now, she knew our mayor at that time, and she knew he was not weak, and I had to explain to her that it was the position, not the person, and that we had a professional city manager who runs the city with his staff, and that the mayor was more of a ceremonial position. I will ensure you, commissioners, that the role of the mayor meets the intent of the charter while carrying it out as a strong person representing an even stronger commission. I believe this form of government has served Johnson City well, and it has gone through the test of time over the years. I will put the Johnson City Commission up as one of the most effective governing bodies anywhere because of that structure. This commission has much work to do to set the stage for the future. And in 2019, we are celebrating our 150th birthday. So we definitely have stood the test of time. It is the commission working with our citizens and the city administration who help us determine the priorities. We will also prioritize funding to maintain the city services, and we'll do this very soon as we prepare to enter the budget planning process. We will also provide oversight of the administration to ensure the city delivers on its promises to the taxpayers. Our citizen satisfaction survey tells us that we are meeting their expectations, but we cannot become complacent or not address the opportunities for improvement that are pointed out to us. We must always set our sights to be the best city to live and conduct business. As I enter this new role of mayor, I will make a commitment to this commission, to Mr. Peterson, the administration, to the employees of the city who are just amazing, and most importantly to the citizens of Johnson City, that I will strive to be an outstanding role model in leadership. And I will challenge this new commission for us to demonstrate excellence in governance in everything we do. Our citizens deserve to see an effective government at work. That must begin with us establishing our governing principles, which we will use to test everything we do. We first learn of the obligation to the people when we take the oath of office, as Commissioner Hunter and I did on Monday. The oath is specific. It defines our duties to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Tennessee, and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Johnson City. That charter was established in 1939, and it specifically defines our form of government and provides us guidance in its governance. It defines the commission as a nonpartisan board, and it requires us to act as trustees and leaders who must act in the best interest of the city. It has withstood the test of time because it has rarely been amended. But when it is, it's required of the commission to pass a resolution, to place the amendment on the ballot, and the citizens of Johnson City are the ones who make that decision in their votes. The charter defines the authority of this commission, the vice mayor, and the mayor. And I pledge to act within the mayor's authority and to represent this commission and this city to the best of my ability. I ask you to hold me accountable if I operate outside of those bounds of the character of our governance principles. Likewise, we must all hold each other accountable to the same. I've never been more optimistic about our city and what we can achieve, mainly because of the makeup of this commission. We must hit the ground running, and I know we will. In our early work, we must spend time visioning, strategic planning, budget preparation, and building strong working relationships with our Washington County counterparts and the region at large. We must realize as the commission that the basis of this work is formed on the foundation of trust. Trust from our citizens, from the city administration and employees, and most importantly, of each other. Personally, I will view everything I do through the lens of building a more resilient community. It is helping us achieve, and that is helping us achieve excellence in health and safety and the economy, the environment, education, neighborhoods, work life, entertainment, the outdoors, and other quality of life activities. I am confident we can effectively lead with a focused plan, being tough when needed, and treating people with kindness, all at the same time. So I look forward to serving as the mayor of our city. I will certainly carry out this role as a vocal and enthusiastic ambassador for Johnson City. I want to thank the citizens of Johnson City and this commission for granting me the privilege to serve. Thank you. Mr. Wise, do you have anything you wanted to say?
Ditto.
So I failed, and I apologize, Commissioner Hunter. This is your first meeting.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter was elected in this recent election. We ran at the same time, and we want to welcome you to the commission. We really look forward to all you have to offer. John Hunter comes with an incredible resume to us, having served on the school board, on the planning commission, and also on the Washington County Mountain States Health Board as well.
Right.
So anything would you like to say?
Thank you, Jenny. I'm excited about the opportunity and look forward to serving with all of you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, Mr. Peterson.
Mayor, your next order of business is you have two items before you that we're asking to be added to the agenda. The first is a presentation that recognizing Wing Deer Park being chosen as Complex of the Year by USA Softball of Tennessee. Second item is consideration of a beer license application for OT Sports and Social. Both of those items are ready for your consideration at tonight's meeting. If you would add them to the agenda, please.
I have a motion to add them. Can we group them together, or do we have to do it separately?
You can group them.
Okay.
Yes,
Is there a motion to add to the agenda?
I move for addition to our agenda, both items.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of the minutes from your regularly scheduled meeting held on Thursday, November the 15th.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, you were asking, I thought you were making the second.
Is there a second? Any further discussions on the minutes? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
I'm going to assume that it's correct, and yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
And Mayor Brock.
Yes.
At this time, if we could make a presentation of a certificate of achievement for an award for the winning artwork for our 2018 city Christmas cards to Xander Whitlock and Cassius Aarons. If we could ask them to come forward, please, with Ms. Green, and if you want to come with your mom and dad, that's okay too.
Good evening. Hope everyone's doing okay tonight. My name is Beth Green, and it's my privilege to be here tonight to recognize the winners of our 2018 City Christmas Card Artwork Program. This program starts during our fall break for our schools, and it's held at Memorial Park Community Center and Carver Park Recreation Center. We get numerous entries every year. It makes it very difficult for us to choose, but we do. Out of all the entries, we select one from each of our parks. And without further ado, our winners this year are Cassius Aarons and Xander Whitlock. And they have their artwork pieces in front of them there, and they've been running up on the TV here, as you can see. These pieces will be on the front of our 2018 City Christmas cards, and all of the artwork pieces are displayed out in our lobby. If you haven't seen them yet, give them a look, and we'll have them there through the Christmas holidays. And if I can ask Mayor Brock to come down, we'll present them with their awards and for an excellent job. Very well done.
Well, this is an outstanding honor for me as my first duty as mayor to be able to recognize you and to thank you on behalf of the commission behind you for participating in this program. You realize that your cards are going to go to all of our Christmas lists that we send out from the city, and that's just awesome. That's just amazing. So thank y'all so much. We have certificates for you. A certificate of achievement to Cassius Aarons, I'm sorry, for creating the winning artwork for the 2018 City of Johnson City Christmas card. Signed this day, the 6th day of December, 2018, by Jenny Brock. I was vice mayor when I signed this earlier in the week, but we could probably get another one with mayor on it. Thank you very much. And this is a certificate of achievement. It is presented to Xander Whitlock for creating the winning artwork for the 2018 City of Johnson City Christmas card, signed this day, the 6th day of December 2018, by me, Jenny L. Brock, as Vice Mayor of the City of Johnson City. Thank y'all so much. Now, we do give you an opportunity to say something. So what would you like to say to your parents and to everybody who's watching on TV and all these people sitting in the chambers tonight?
I would like to shout out to Carver Rec Center. They gave me the opportunity to be in this competition. And I would like to shout out to my family over there. You get hello. They're just amazing, and they got me into the Carver Rec Center, which helped me. They helped me improve on my drawing skills, and so I'm just thankful for all that.
Very nice. Let's give her a hand. Let's give them all a hand. Thank you.
At this, your next item, Commissioners, we'd like to ask James Ellis to come forward to make a presentation of the award we received for Wing Deer Park being chosen as Complex of the Year by USA Softball of Tennessee.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, on behalf of USA Softball for the state of Tennessee and our state president, Dwayne Hill. It's my honor to present you with the USA Softball of Tennessee 2018 Complex of the Year Award for Wing Deer Park.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. I was very privileged to be able to go down to Chattanooga to receive this on behalf of the city. And we should all feel really good about our park system here. The compliments that I heard in the crowd who were attending, and there were, I don't know, 100 or more who were there, who have come to Wing Deer Park to play softball tournaments were just really amazing to me to know that the investments we're making there, and then the soon-to expansion of Wing Deer Park will just be a place for bigger and better tournaments and fields for our own residents to be able to play, and they don't have to come at 9 o'clock at night to have a practice. So we appreciate this. We'll put it in the trophy case along with some other things, and I will accept this on behalf of the commission. Thank you.
Next order of business is consideration of a beer license application for Barbecue Integrated Incorporated, doing business as Smoky Bones Bar and Fire Grill, located at 1905 North Run Street, Johnson City. This is a change of ownership or management. All the appropriate reviews have been made, finding no disqualifying factors. Our recommendation would be for your approval.
Is the owner present?
We can do that. I move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
Are there any other questions or comments about this application for beer license? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Your next order of business is consideration of a beer license application for OT Sports and Social LLC, located at 2102 North Run Street. This is an application for a Class 1 on-premise beer license. The appropriate reviews having been made, finding no disqualifying factors, the recommendation is for your approval.
Is the applicant present? Yes. Could you come to the podium, please? If you just state your name and address.
George Leonard. You
And-
want the business address?
Sure.
2102 North Rome Street.
Okay, for the record, yes. Have you read the rules and regulations about the sale of alcohol in Johnson City?
I'm the former owner of 50/50. I sold the business, and it's kind of come around full circle.
Okay.
So we're
So you agreed to abide by those rules and regulations? Okay, thank you. Commissioners?
Move approval. Second.
Okay, is there any other questions for our applicant or discussion items? Okay, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. You want to say anything about your new business you're opening up? You have a chance now.
Well, we're close to getting it open. It's going to be a lot like 50/50 was, and invite everybody out to have a good time.
That was like a sports
Well, it's a
bar?
sports bar,
Okay.
sports and social.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This takes us to appointments on your agenda, the first being consideration of one appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
All right, Commissioners, we have one appointment to the BZA, and Ms. Lockmiller, Jenny Lockmiller, is requesting reappointment. She has served her first term and is requesting a second term, which we normally do.
I would make a motion that we reappoint Jenny Lockmiller.
Second that.
Motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
I would like to say that we appreciate the other people willing to do this. Again, we're fortunate to have people who are willing to serve on these things, and just because we didn't vote them in tonight, don't stop doing that, so.
And we generally do 2 terms.
Right.
Ms. Lockmiller, I would also like to make a comment that she has done an outstanding job. The BZA is a very effective board, and we appreciate all the efforts of all the members of the BZA. Okay?
Next order of business is to make 7 appointments to the Senior Services Advisory Council. There's a summary in your packet of the applicants and the recommendations. Your appointments to make.
Okay. Commissioners, let's go ahead and read their names. You want to do that for us?
The names are Alice Sperling, Eugene Gillespie, Bernard Hanley, Carol Burks, Vito, anybody want to help me?
Resminas.
Resminas, thank you, Ronald Anderson, and Phil Worrell.
Okay. We have some representatives from the Senior Advisory Group, or these are your recommendations then? Okay.
I
Is there a
move
motion?
to approve all of the
Okay.
applicants.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? And again, we're so appreciative of all the people who give the time on these boards, and this is a great list of people. We appreciate their willingness to serve. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise,
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next order of business is to make 2 appointments to the Senior Center Foundation Board. You've got recommendations and people of interest in your packet, those being Rebecca Hennessy and Whitney Larkin.
Commissioners?
I move for approval of the 2 applicants.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those, Ms. Jennings, call the roll.
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise,
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Your next order of business is to make an appointment of the municipal court judge. Mr. Stan Widener has filled this position since September of 2006. Mr. Widener's done a very nice job there. His salary is set at $30,000. He is requesting appointment, so you will need to make an appointment and set the salary, which will be in place for 2 years, as this position is appointed every 2 years immediately following the municipal election.
Mr. Peterson, if this is the current salary and we're making it for 2 years, are there any recommendations, or any changes in that, or when this, does the city increase apply to this position?
There are no automatic increases that apply to either the municipal court judge or the juvenile court judge. A judge's salary has to be a set amount when they're appointed. Since Mr. Widener isn't present and I can't aggravate him, it would be in keeping with what we've done for all the other employees to make an adjustment on this salary. The adjustment that we made this past year was 4%. So I think contemplating additional increases over the next couple of years, a 5 or 6% adjustment to the $30,000 would be appropriate.
So do we want to add that into a motion that the salary treatment would be the same as for all city employees?
You could certainly do that as well, yes, ma'am.
So that would mean it would still be 30 tomorrow.
Correct.
And then
There
the
would be
next
no
time-
adjustment take effect until July 1, 2019.
I would make that motion to appoint and then tie compensation over the next 2 years to adjustments in the city payroll.
I second that.
Any further discussion? I guess we want to note as well that Judge Widener runs a very efficient courtroom.
He does.
And he takes care of the city's interests, and we're pleased to have him. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise,
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
The next order of business is consideration of a street closure request for the Thirsty Orange Beer Extravaganza to be held on Saturday, April 13th, 2019. This is an annual event that plans to follow the same that they've done the last year or two. This is a request to close a portion of Commerce Street from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. For the purposes of the festival. We have made the appropriate reviews and are recommending your approval.
Is the applicant in here? I think Ms. Keenan has been working very closely with them, and if there are any questions about this, I think she can answer those. This is a recurring event in the city.
And we do appreciate them coming so far in advance to get this
They
done
do.
instead
This
of
is not
last
till
minute kind of
April.
things.
It's very good. So is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next order of business is consideration of the consent agenda.
Commissioners, we'll start down to my right with Commissioner Calhoun. Do you want to pull any items?
No, I do not.
Not tonight, okay? Vice Mayor
Not
Wise?
tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Hart?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner? Wow, and I don't have anything either, so this is a quick one.
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Now, y'all gonna have to give me a second. I'm not accustomed
We
to
can
this whole
work
thing
faster
to the
now.
consent agenda. All right, this will take us to ordinances, with the first one being first reading of ordinance number 4670-18. This is, give me just a second. And the caption is as follows. Ordinance 4670-18, an ordinance to amend Title 12 of the Code of the City of Johnson City, Tennessee regarding adoption of the 2018 International Code Council codes as amended by this ordinance, and repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith. Ready for your consideration on first reading. Mr. Sullivan, if you could give us an explanation of what's before us,
I will.
we will be appreciative.
Good evening, Commissioners, Madam Mayor. The ordinance that we're bringing before you tonight is the adoption of the new building codes, which have been published by the International Code Council. This is the 2018 edition of the International Code Council's building codes. The city right now is currently under the 2012 edition of the International Code Council's building codes. The state of Tennessee, oops, excuse me. Let me get organized here for a second. The state of Tennessee requires us as an exempt jurisdiction to publish our codes, and they must be within 7 years of the latest published edition of any national code producing body. Most of the state of Tennessee follows the International Code Council's building codes, and we are looking at having to upgrade our codes now to the 2018 editions. As we are coming into 2019, we are about to daylight or to sunlight our codes. So that's what we're looking to do.
Mr. Sullivan, is there a deadline? I mean, are we
We're
just the end of 2019?
the end of
Okay.
2019. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes, ma'am. So the codes that we are looking to adopt are there's actually 11 codes that we are looking to adopt as part of this ordinance. It consists of the International Building Code, which is all of our commercial buildings. That's what we build our commercial building stock under. The International Residential Code, which is our 1 and 2 family and townhouses that we build. The International Existing Building Code. This is the code that we utilize for the redevelopment of our downtown and reutilization of our existing building stock. The International Energy Conservation Code. This is the code that basically is incorporating many of the Federal Department of Energy's energy guidelines for energy conservation in our buildings. We have the 2018 International Fire Code, And the fire department utilizes this to perform their fire inspections on our existing buildings. The 2017 National Electrical Code, which is basically all of the guidance that we utilize for electrical wiring and safety in our building stock. The International Mechanical Code governs all of our mechanical equipment in our commercial structures. The Fuel Gas Code deals with all of our gas appliances and our gas installations for natural gas systems. The Plumbing Code obviously deals with all of our plumbing in our commercial structures. The International Property Maintenance Code is a document that we utilize for our existing building stock and make sure that we are maintaining the minimum standards for health and safety and sanitation in our existing buildings. And that is our Property Maintenance Code inspectors. And then what's new this year in the International Code Council's list of codes is the International Swimming Pool Code. This was formerly a appendix in the building code, but they have actually broken it out into its own standalone edition in this code cycle. So that's what we are doing. The building codes are designed to provide us the basic minimum standards of life and safety in our building stock for new construction. And your building department and the building inspectors are responsible for going out and ensuring that the minimum standards for life and safety are met, and we inspect those structures to these standards as the buildings come out of the ground. So that's the intent of these codes. A question that has been asked of me as we were discussing the adoption of these codes is, what is the cost to our development community? And what is the cost of these increased standards as we go through that code adoption? It's an interesting question, and I had a chance to break into this a little bit over the last few days, and we had a chance to study the National Association of Home Builders reports over the last 3 code cycles, and I was able to pull from those code cycle reports the following information. Principally, we are looking at 3 editions of code changes in this adoption. Currently, we have adopted the 2012 Energy Code. However, we utilize the 2009 tables for our residential structures. So as we adopt these new codes, we'll be moving through actually the 2012 and the 2015 changes in the Energy Code. The principal cost the total cost for a single-family house, and this is based on a 2,600 square foot house, the total cost update for the average developer would be about $8,700. Be the total cost change in the development from a 2009 structure to a 2018 structure. The bulk of that cost is actually coming out of the 2009 to 2012 Energy Code changes. In that cycle, there was a significant increase in the thermal envelope requirements for single-family homes. We at that time required much more insulation in our walls and our ceilings and in our attics. We had increased mechanical requirements for the energy efficiency of our mechanical systems, and that actually equates to almost a $7,000 change in the requirements of developers to develop their structures. In 2015, we were looking at about an $1,800 net change in the cost of developing a 2,600 square foot home. And actually, in this last code cycle in 2018, it turns out that it was about $84, the net change in all of the code cycle changes that affect a single-family home.
Just to make sure I understand that, on 2009, that's already baked in. Those are costs that they are already, putting
Well,
into
actually,
the homes.
technically, under our current code adoption right now, we've adopted under our current energy code that we have right now, we are using the 2009 tables. So we have to move out of the 2009 tables anyway. So when they switched from the 2009 to the 2012, that's when that code cycle was affected those costs.
Okay, but they're already paying those costs. They're
That's
building
correct,
those
yes.
in. Same thing with the 15. So what we're considering in this round to up to 2018, we're only looking at $84.
Well, not
change?
not exactly, no, ma'am. We've got, because we are currently under the 2012, so we're actually jumping ahead through 2 code cycle changes. So we're going to be incorporating those changes as well. Those would be the changes from the 2009 Energy Code update.
All of it,
And the
okay.
2015 code updates will be incorporated into this ordinance change. So the total cost change would be $8,800 roughly.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and that's a conservative figure, but that's based on the National Association of Home Builders Association's reports. I'll be happy to provide that to you if you have any
Thanks for getting
questions
that number,
regarding that. You're welcome. So there we go. Another question that I've been asked to address is what is our surrounding jurisdictions doing? Currently, we are looking at the 2018 code adoptions. Our neighboring city of Kingsport has already adopted back in July these 2018 codes. For your consideration, I wanted to offer to you that we have some local amendments that we do to change these codes and to update these codes for our local needs. I was asked to do a comparison between us and Kingsport, as well as far as our local amendments are concerned. So what I've done is I've taken each of the codes and tried to show you the difference between the city of Johnson City and Kingsport. This is the International Building Code, and it refers to the appendices that we have adopted as part of this code adoption. The appendices that are in black have been adopted by both us and the city of Kingsport. The appendix, which is actually in a red, is only the city of Kingsport has adopted that. So we have both adopted the Appendix B, Appendix C, and Appendix K as part of the building code adoption. The only difference is the city of Kingsport also adopted an additional appendix which deals with grading regulations, and that is in the city of Kingsport only. The International Building Code amendments. We have some local amendments in the text of the code. The text which is in blue, those are strictly City of Johnson City amendments. And we are incorporating some local bonding requirements that we have for temporary certificates of occupancy. It's an administrative requirement that we have that's particular to our local regulations. We also incorporate the local Board of Building Code procedures for appeals for any decisions made by myself or my department. And that, again, is local to the City of Johnson City. The City of Kingsport has a requirement for fence permits, and they actually amended the code to change that requirement from 7 feet to 8 feet. So any fence that's over 8 feet will require a building permit in the City of Kingsport. We both incorporate the state of Tennessee definitions and exemptions for sprinklers in townhouses. So we are consistent with our neighboring jurisdiction as far as the sprinkler requirements in townhouse construction. In the city of Johnson City, we do have an amendment which requires fire protection or automatic sprinklers in all of our educational occupancies. That is not an amendment that the city of Kingsport has adopted. Both jurisdictions have inspection requirements for elevators per the Tennessee code, and we've both amended our codes to incorporate the Tennessee language for elevators and escalators. Amendments have been removed, which were incorporated into the updated publications, and we have both jurisdictions have participated in that local amendment as well. Let's see. The International Residential Code, which is the code that we utilize to build single-family houses and townhouses with. This is the appendices that have been adopted by each of the jurisdictions. The ones in blue, again, are particular to the city of Johnson City, and the ones in black are for both jurisdictions. In the city of Johnson City, we are looking in this ordinance to adopt almost all of the appendices in the International Residential Code. Many of these are informative only, and they're for the builders and for the building inspectors, providing them some graphics and some design requirements and some explanation of design requirements in the code. Both jurisdictions are adopting Appendix F, which deals with radon control in single-family structures. Washington County and Sullivan County fall into the high probability areas for radon gas emissions. And I've had conversations with other neighboring jurisdictions, and it appears that all of our neighboring jurisdictions will be adopting this appendix as well for radon control abatement measures. Appendix J is codifying the requirements for remodeling of 1 and 2 family structures. Both of our jurisdictions have adopted that as well. And we have both adopted the requirements for tiny houses, which is a relatively new animal, but it's structures that are built that are less than 400 square feet as single-family structures. Can be built under the International Residential Code, and this provides code-compliant methods to do that. So both jurisdictions have done that as well. Any questions? No? Okay, very good. The local amendments in the residential code. The city of Kingsport actually has lowered the threshold for permit exemptions. In the city of Johnson City, we allow, per the residential code, any structure that's built that's less than 200 square feet is exempt from building permit requirements. If you go over to the city of Kingsport, that's lowered down to 120 square feet. So if you are anything less than 120 square feet, then you're exempt. So I think that's a carryover probably from a prior code edition for them as well. We are both incorporating our local flood insurance program requirements into our building codes, and that's fairly common. In the city of Johnson City, we have some particular plumbing requirements for the joining of and using of solvents and joining plastic pipe, and that is unique to Johnson City. We are removing some electrical wiring requirements, which were not consistent with our neighboring jurisdictions. So actually, that puts us in line with our neighboring Kingsport. So we are looking at the same electrical requirements as they are as far as our residential wiring is concerned. We are both continuing to exempt the sprinkler requirements in accordance with the state of Tennessee's guidelines for 1 and 2 family structures. So that's common to both jurisdictions. In the city of Johnson City, we do have a proposed amendment to our local code requiring an exterior service to disconnect for single-family structures, and that is unique to us as well. But we're going to be doing a main disconnect on the outside of the structures near the meters, so that'll be a unique local amendment for us as well. Under the existing building code, the city of Kingsport does not have any amendments to their existing building code. We have one, and that is we've added in the local flood insurance provisions must be applied to historic renovations as well as all other renovations in the city of Johnson City. Under International Fire Code amendments, the city has a few local amendments, and those basically are that the existing public roads are subject to approval as fire access roads, but they have to be approved by either the city manager or the fire chief to be utilized as fire access roads in new construction. We have an amendment that is a little bit more restrictive as far as address identification, and it's really very simple. It just means that the numbers on the outside of your building on a commercial structure need to be 6 inches tall in contrasting color as opposed to 4 inches tall. So that's the amendment that we're talking about there. We have an amendment that provides for fire department connections must be located within 100 feet of a hydrant. So when you're developing a new development in Johnson City, we do require hydrants to be within 100 feet of the fire department connection. We provide, again, sprinkler protection in all of the educational occupancies. That's a requirement of the fire code. It's consistent with our building code adoption. And we have an exception in the current fire code that we are continuing for standpipe usage in sprinkler buildings, which requires automatic systems. The code is actually written which accepts manual systems, but under our local amendment, we require automatic systems.
Mr. Sullivan, on bullet 3, the 100 feet,
Yes.
If someone's building a new residential neighborhood from scratch, what is this going to mean in terms of the number of hydrants now they're going to have to put in versus what they would have to put in now
If you're in a single family development where the sprinklers are not required in those houses, it doesn't make any difference at all. If you have a building that you are building that has required automatic fire protection, such as a new school, it means that you must place a hydrant within 100 feet of that fire department connection. So typically speaking, it's usually the addition of one hydrant for each building if it affects that property at all. So it's a matter of where you place your private hydrant and making sure that it's close enough to that fire department connection.
But if you have a typical neighborhood and you've got 10 houses down one street on one side, how many more hydrants now are they going to
It
have
would
to
not
put?
affect, in
Okay. Oh, it does not
single
apply.
family. Does
Okay.
does
I'm
not
sorry.
apply to those.
I'm sorry, I
So
misunderstood.
this is for commercial building.
Would they hook the hose to the outside of the building somehow? It's an
Correct.
FDC thing? Okay.
Yes, yes. And it just says that within 100 feet of that FDC, you must have a water supply. So that's the requirement for that hydrant.
Yeah.
Okay. In the city of Kingsport, they adopted all of the appendices in the fire codes. We chose not to adopt the appendices in the fire code, and there's some retroactive provisions that are in those codes, and that was the reason why we did not do that. So they're actually finding themselves much more restrictive than we are as far as the adoption of the fire code. The International Energy Conservation Code Amendment, and this is one that I think the builders will appreciate, is that the 2018 Energy Code, we have one amendment, and that is an amendment that relieves the developers of single-family detached structures, relieves them of the responsibility and the mandatory requirement to perform blower door testing and duct blaster testing is what it's referred to. That is a mandatory provision in the code. We've made that optional for single-family detached structures, and that'll lower the cost for those builders. So that is an amendment that we have. The city of Kingsport does not allow for that. That'll be a mandatory requirement for developers in the city of Kingsport. In the International Fuel Gas Code, we have one amendment, and that is that we require an additional ditch be dug for gas outside of the other utilities in the ground. The city of Kingsport has no amendments in that code either. National Electrical Code amendments. We have a few amendments in the National Electrical Code. The city of Kingsport has no amendments to their adoption, but our amendments consist of providing some color coding for conductors and service applications. The provides for some additional shunt trips and some service disconnects on electrical services and generators. These are safety amendments. And we have some restrictions of the use of non-metallic cable in certain occupancies. And that's a carryover from our last code as well. We have removed some language restricting the gauge of wire in dwelling units. So that's actually an improvement over the last code cycle as well. And that's really all the local amendments we have in our code adoption. So with that, I ask if you have any questions.
That was very helpful, thank you.
Yes.
I heard
Just like
today
you asked.
that California's new buildings all will have to have solar panels.
That's correct.
All of them from here on out.
That is
So
correct.
we're not quite as restrictive on our building as they are.
I don't know if that would work as well in
I
Tennessee
don't
with our
think so,
sunshine
in our
either.
area with mountains and such, but
There we go. Okay, thank you.
Believe what impact that has on the electrical code.
oh, I'm sure.
Well, we have an alternative. You can lease from the solar farm. It's going to be good.
Let me just say, Mr. Sullivan, I've been talking to a couple of builders, and they've been very complimentary on how you've tried to keep them appraised of this coming down the road, and obviously won't have a lot of choices in some of this, but I'm sure we'll hear some comments next meeting. However, it sounds like you've done a really good job of incorporating that information into the community already,
Thank you.
so thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, commissioners, what's your pleasure? Anybody have a motion?
I will move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? This will be first reading. We'll have 3 readings. Second reading, we have public input. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Okay. We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. Thank you.
Your next order for consideration is a resolution to annex property at 317 Green Pond Road. A resolution to annex certain property located in the, is it the 8th or the 11th? You have written out 11th and in parentheses wrote the numeral 8. So I need some clarification. Sorry, Asong, I should have caught this earlier.
The 19th. You're to add.
Or the average would be 9.5.
While the song works on that, let's think through different ways you could interpret this.
Okay, let's, a resolution to annex certain property located at 317 Green Pond Road in Washington County, Tennessee, adjoining the present corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, said property being known as the Green Pond Road annexation. To zone said property RP3 Planned Residential District as described herein and to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee accordingly, being a part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, is ready for your consideration on first reading.
Sir, to correct that, that is the 8th Civil District.
It is the 8th Civil District. I see that now. Yes, sir. Thank you, Song.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is a request from TMC developers to annex a piece of property that it owns at the intersection of West Walnut Street and Green Pond Road. This piece of property is in the urban growth area of the city, and it adjoins another piece of property that is currently inside the city limits and zone RP3. As such, it meets the legal requirements for annexation. This property zoned RP3 was annexed into the city in 2005. That was November 2005. And at the time, the developer was proposing to build 50 lots, single-family residential homes on this piece of property. Since then, he has made a number of changes on different concept plans right up to this point. This shows the proposed project that he intends to construct on this particular piece of property. Although it incorporates both lots, the only property being considered for annexation is a 10.68 acres lot. And this will contain 34 pieces of properties. Staff has analyzed the financial impact this is going to have on the city. It basically comes down to $51 recurring plus, but we will have estimated initial revenue of $107,379. This revenue will mainly come from water and sewer tap fees that will be paid for all those lots that are going to be developed on the property. As far as the plan of services is concerned, a cost that the city will have to bear will be to extend the sewer line. The sewer line currently ends on the other side of West Walnut Street. The city will have to extend that to the site when the subdivision process begins. That is estimated to cost $26,000. Sewer tap fees from there will be $34,650 estimated. So that will be a balance. The Planning Commission recommends that the City Commission approve these annexation requests and the associated plan of services.
Okay. Commissioners? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Any questions of the song?
There will be some comment during our public comment in 2 weeks from the neighborhood who are concerned about the development occurring on this parcel, and I won't characterize their comments beyond that. One of the things that's important to note, the difference between this property as it can be developed, whether it's annexed or not, is negligible. And so if your concern is about whether it develops or not, the annexation request isn't really going to make much of a difference. And so with that, I'm supportive of it, recognizing that there are concerns in the neighborhood, but I'm afraid they're misplaced. Denying the annexation isn't going to keep undeveloped land undeveloped. The thing that keeps undeveloped land undeveloped is to buy it and control its future. And if you aren't doing that, then I think the city is better equipped to manage some of the outcomes that could occur in development.
And we have publicized the public hearing for next meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4671-18. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith, and amendatory thereof by assigning a RP3 planned residential to certain property within the 8th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, known as the Green Pond Road annexation, is ready for your consideration on first reading.
The city annexed by resolution and assigned zoning by ordinance. Just as Commissioner Wise mentioned, this is the piece of property we're looking at. It's currently zoned R1 in the county, which will permit lots, minimum lot size, 15,000 square feet. If he were to develop this piece of property in the county right now, he would be permitted to have 31 lots in the county. And what he's proposing to develop, once we annex this into the city, we will have 34 lots. One of those lots is already developed, the other one will just be a detention pond. So really, we end up with about 32 lots, which has no significant difference with what he would have had if he developed this in the county. The Planning Commission recommends that the ROP3 zone be assigned to this property, which will be contiguous with the existing ROP3 zone of the adjoining property.
Would move approval.
Is there a second? Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
The next order of business is consideration of the plan of services for the rezoning of property located at 317 Green Pond Road. Ms. Allen?
We presented that
Got it.
already. Do you want me to go back to that?
You just approved.
Yeah, we saw the plan of services.
Okay, so did you include that in your motion? I wasn't paying that close attention.
No, I don't believe we did.
Okay, you need to make a motion and approve the plan of services that was presented, in addition to approval of the
Resolution.
ordinance 4671-18, which assigns the zoning.
Have a motion?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion on the plan of services for
Do we really need to
317?
change this from Johnson City Power Board again, that we talked about, to
Bright Ridge.
Bright Ridge and all
Ridge,
three
yeah.
of these? Because it continues to say that, and I just don't want anybody unhappy with what we approved tonight.
Yes, sir, you could include that in the motion,
motion,
that
yeah.
you approve it, and
change
that
the
you also
Johnson City Power
want all
Board to Bright
references to
Ridge.
the Power Board changed to Bright Ridge.
I'll amend my motion to say that,
What he said?
what he said.
Who
Exactly.
seconds what he said?
Yeah.
Seconded.
Seconding that same thing.
Motion and a second to what he said then. Okay. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
All right, your next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4672-18. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and a mandatory thereof by changing from I-1 Light Industrial District to B-4 Arterial Business District. Certain property located at 2912 Boones Creek Road is ready for your consideration on first reading.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is a request from the property owner to rezone a piece of property he owns at 2912 Bones Creek Road from I-1 to B-4. This property on Bones Creek Road is currently vacant, and the property owner does not have any development plan at this time. However, he is making the request to make the zone of this piece of property align with the surrounding zoning. This is basically the reason for this rezoning request. The future land use map of the city has designated this corridor, Bones Creek corridor, for commercial development, which will be in line with what the developer is proposing. The west side, if you look on Bones Creek Road, the east side of Quality Circle has basically developed as a light industrial area. But the western portion of it has developed commercial, which implies that his request will basically be compatible with the development character of this area. There will not be any significant changes in terms of the uses that will be permitted once this rezoning goes through. The only significant change will be that he can then use this property for restaurants, retail, banking, financing businesses, which are predominantly present in that particular corridor. This rezoning will not create any spot zone. It will simply be an extension of the surrounding zoning district. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Very good. Do you have a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4673-18. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and a mandatory thereof by changing from R2 Low Density Residential District to R2C Low Density Residential District. Certain property located at 1101 Skyline Drive is ready for your consideration on first reading. Mr. Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Good evening, Commissioners, Ms. Mayor. The proposed rezoning is for a .55 acre property at 1101 Skyline Drive. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from R2 to R2C in order to subdivide the lot and construct an additional single-family home while preserving the existing 1940s bungalow, which is currently on the parcel. A couple of the primary considerations when evaluating this application revolved around, one, compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood, and two, making sure that it met the area requirements for R2C while also aligning with the character of the neighborhood. The proposed concept plan and zoning district satisfy that criteria. This is a quick comparison of the differences between the R2 zoning district and the R2C zoning district. Essentially, R2C is a smaller lot, more urban, single-family residential district. At the November 13th meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval with the following rationale. First of all, the proposal is consistent with the future land use plan. Secondly, the proposal promotes infill development. And lastly, Skyline Drive is a feeder street which connects multifamily uses to the surrounding R2 single-family neighborhoods. So the R2C zoning will serve as a transitional zone in this section of Skyline Drive. And there was one condition, as it pertains to that condition, that we are requesting that site distance measurements be provided. We are still awaiting the required site distance measurements. They will be provided to the commission prior to the second reading and at the public hearing for the concept plan, which will occur in 2 weeks. If that information is received by staff. The applicant has promised staff that they've contacted a surveyor and will provide that information. Are there any questions?
Mr. Manley, I rode out there to take a look at that. The existing house, which side of the property is going to be divided and a new residence being built?
So if you're facing the house, it's on the left.
It's on the left?
Yes.
Okay.
It does look like there's a large open area. If you're facing the house on the right, there's also some space there. But as far as how the amount of frontage that was available and where we felt like we could pull a house up to be have the same amount of front setback, we wanted to maintain kind of similar front setbacks along that street. And so this is what we worked with the applicant to come up with. And there were a few variations, and this was they had enough property to probably do an R2A and R2B, but because of the differences in the some of the setbacks and widths that are required by those other zoning districts, it would have pushed the house kind of back and behind the other house, and that would have been out of character with the neighborhood. So we worked with them to come up with this scenario.
In your neighborhood meeting on October the 6th, did you have anybody show up?
Staff does not attend those meetings. From what we understand, there were no one that showed up, but my understanding is that the applicant did a lot of kind of door-to-door talking to neighbors prior to even having that neighborhood meeting, just to tell some of the folks within the 200-foot radius what his idea was, what he was trying to achieve. I did get some phone calls, just really some folks that are asking questions, saw the sign went up, got the letter, can you tell me about that? And did not have any kind of negative feedback or comments, mostly relief that it was a single-family home and that there wasn't some kind of multifamily development going in.
Commissioners, anyone ready for a motion or want some? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. And next meeting will be the public hearing, and we've made sure we've notified everybody there is a public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Wilson, at this time, we would ask your consideration of an approval of the 2019 Joint Legislative Policy of the Tri-Cities. As you are probably aware, historically, Johnson City, Bristol, and Kingsport worked cooperatively to draft a legislative agenda. We have found that it is much more effective to speak with one voice in Northeast Tennessee, upper Northeast Tennessee, than it is with three individual voices. And we spend several months of meetings and trying to refine those issues that are of importance to us, those that we would like to see implemented, as well as those issues that others have suggested that we find may not be in our best interest. So I would ask Bob to give us a recap of what is in the packet and perhaps just highlight the significant differences from last year. You all have had this in your packets and hopefully have had time to review it. And if you've got questions, we'll be glad to answer. Bob?
Thanks. With last year's policy, we kind of narrowed the focus down and tried to really focus on some major issues. So this year has continued that format. We have 5 areas. The first one is urban growth and planning. no changes with the items that were in there. What we had is we want to emphasize to the legislature that if there's a de-annexation, only be allowed or considered if a city has not complied with its plan of services. We also like for them to clarify the annexation laws. They've made a lot of changes, and there's still some ambiguity in those laws. So we would ask them to make it clear so that there's no confusion with that. Would also oppose any legislation that would reduce the authority of the Regional Planning Commission to regulate land within the urban growth boundary. We've added a new one in there regarding blight elimination. We would just encourage the legislature that if any legislation comes up on this, that would simplify and that process and the mechanisms that they support that. We've just been advised there's one city in East Tennessee that could possibly be pursuing some clarity with that, and we would support them if that comes to pass. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask. The next section is on education funding. This year, our main focus is on the maintenance of efforts. What that means is, I know most of you are aware of this, but it just simply requires the local funding bodies to fund their school district at the same level as the prior year. But in the event a county were to change the way it funds its school district or school system and provides less revenue to the city school system as a result of that, then per a comptroller's office ruling, the city is responsible for making up the difference. What all this is about was a couple of years ago in Sullivan County changed the way it was funding they changed the tax on their school fund, and they took money away from the two city school systems, and they gave that to the county, and then the city school systems had to make up the difference. This came after the cities had adopted their annual budget, so that was a bit of a challenge for them, and I think between the two of them, it was well over $1 million they had to make up. We would ask that be clarified and just brought that to their attention.
Mr. Wilson, under what premise did the county remove this money? If the funding formula in years past have always been this, why did they feel justified in doing that?
Well, the reason my understanding of that process was that the county was sued by their sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department was successful in that suit to come up with the funding for that to pay that off. They had to they ended up taking the money away from the two city school systems. Now the money they were getting was classified as capital, so it wasn't
maintenance.
So they had some flexibility to do that, but the way they did it and the timing they did it made it very challenging for the two city school systems.
They could only do that with capital money. They couldn't do that with any money that goes toward instruction.
No, they couldn't lower their maintenance of effort.
Bob, not to
please
dispute what you said, but that also involved, if I understand correctly, there was some monies given to education has to be split proportionally based on the ADM. The Sullivan County School ADM decreased. So they decreased the funding to Sullivan County schools, if I'm understanding this right. And as a result, that portion that went to Bristol and Kingsport also got reduced. And it was after they had adopted their operating year budgets that this came into effect. And they appealed to, they being the cities, appealed to the comptroller's office about the requirement for the maintenance of effort. And they were told that if the county reduces funding and thus it negatively impacts the city system, that the city is responsible for picking up that maintenance of effort load and keeping the funding steady. That's what they're trying to avoid.
But the trigger was a reduction in BEP funding to the county because their population had gone down.
Not BEP
No?
funding.
No,
No.
county funding, not
Okay.
state funding.
It's all county.
County
funding.
taxes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So what the goal is here is to get some safeguards in place that cities would not be responsible for a level of maintenance of effort that had previously been charged to the counties in terms of operating budgets for schools. If that makes sense.
What does the school system do then when, it was a fairly substantial amount of money, wasn't it?
Yes.
I want to say it cost Kingsport more than $500,000, and Bristol was 300,000 or
It was
350.
about, I think it was just over $1 million combined between the two systems. So,
Dr. Calhoun, that's as concerned a face as I've seen on you since
Yeah.
you've been on
I just
council.
wonder what school systems would do if they were to do this.
You read my face well.
Welcome aboard.
Let's not let that happen.
Yeah.
any
I'm
other
sorry.
questions?
Go
No,
ahead.
No, fine. I thank you for your comments. The other one regards PC 901 mixed drink tax. We would ask that if this is not decided by the Supreme Court prior to the session, that they consider extending the legislation that's been extended for, I think, for the last 3 years, that would allow city school systems for cities to continue only sharing the mixed drink tax with city school systems and not with county systems. There were some areas that we've had in our prior policies that after much discussion, we decided to leave out of this one. And they are serious areas, but they're also very challenging. Public Chapter 305, which allows appropriating funds to school systems for non-recurring educational expenditures without including this in the maintenance of effort. Now, Jenny, Mayor Brock may recall that a few years ago, we did this on a one-time expenditure for the schools. But when the counties do this, and this was totally unanticipated, when they do it, then they are they're taking city tax dollar funds that were paid for education, and they're giving it to the counties, but not sharing it with the cities. If a city does it, it's our own money, so to speak.
They're taking the county taxes paid by city residents.
Correct.
That's supposed to be shared for education, and because they used it in a cash
Basis, one-time
Basis
funding
on
basis
capital.
only, they don't share that
There's a
with
little
us.
loophole in this law that kind of allows that.
Yeah. And the other, I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, but, I mean, but we saw the big breadth of it this last year with a
Yes.
loss, a considerable amount of loss.
And we also had a section in there regarding the amending of the Education Finance Act, which per a court interpretation only requires that funds allocated for the operation and maintenance of schools be shared with city schools. So that if a county has a capital fund, puts dollars in the capital fund, those do not have to be shared per this court ruling. This has been out there for several years, and while it may sound relatively simple, it's not. And there's been a lot of confusion over this. The legislators don't understand the complexity of it. There's not been any movement on this in the legislature. And also, this is definitely a negative impact on the counties. Well, there are 95 county systems, and there's about 35 city school systems. It's not an issue the legislature is anxious to take up. So it's still out there, but just for those reasons, we decided not to include those in the packet. It doesn't mean we can't talk about it, but we haven't gotten a lot of traction because a lot of times when you're talking about it, the eyes kind of glaze over and it gets confusing to them, and you're pitting city schools against county schools, and that in itself just becomes problematic. So that was why we left that out.
Just for Commissioner Calhoun's benefit, can you quickly review the current building program out in the county and how, because they're paying for a big portion of it in cash, the impact that's had on city schools?
I'm just trying to get my thoughts together. It's really, it's in Commissioner Wise, if I get off base here, since you understand the county side of that pretty well, help me out here.
And I know John knows all about it.
When a local government entity issues debt for school construction, the proceeds of that debt have to be shared proportionately against each LEA, local education group, in that county. Currently, Washington County educates about 53% of the total students in Washington County, and Johnson City educates about 47% of the total students in Washington County. State law requires counties to educate students. There is no requirement for a city school system. That is totally a discretionary decision by cities, which we have chosen to do in 1939. So if you issue debt, you have to share the proceeds. That traditionally has always been the model followed across the state of Tennessee, with the exception of McMinn County. And as I understand it, and unless things have changed, McMinn County has no debt. I've never taken the time to understand or figure out how they were able to pull that off, but that's probably something I need to figure out. So, in McMinn County, they have done all their school building on a cash basis. They don't share with the city of Athens. And it's probably been 8 or 10 years ago now, others found out that if you don't issue debt and you can pay cash for things, you don't have to share the proceeds. So, for ease of illustration, let's say the student load is 50-50 in Washington County. So if the county goes to build a $30 million school building and they issue debt for it, they actually have to issue $60 million worth of debt, because it takes 30 to build their building, and since we're educating half of the students within the county, they have to give us $30 million, which can only be used for school construction. Okay? So I don't remember the year. It's been 2 years ago, 3. Anyway, the county recently did a property tax increase and set up a capital fund, which of that they are dedicating 32 cents for education,
40
for
cents.
education facilities out of a 40-cent tax increase, which is enabling them to pay cash for school construction. So when they go into that cash mode, they no longer have to share proceeds with with those of us who are Washington County residents who choose to live within the corporate boundaries. Again, in general terms, about 65% of the property taxes generated in Washington County originate within the corporate limits of the city of Johnson City. So the non-municipal resident is enjoying the luxury of the municipal county residents paying 65% of this tax increase, which is being utilized to build school buildings for non-municipal students.
Now, playing devil's advocate,
Yeah,
not all
please do.
property within the incorporated city limits is owned by citizens of the city. It is possible that I could live in Telford and own property and pay property taxes in the city and be a part of that 65%.
That is correct, and we
Those
have.
three people you're talking
I'm
about.
just saying, Floyd County and own
Yeah,
stuff
well, no,
here.
that's absolutely true. Right, no, no,
Not just Washington County.
And just
Right.
having a little fun back, playing devil's advocate, you could be somebody like the group that owns the mall, who is one of our top 10 property tax
Who
payers in
don't
Washington
even have
County,
benefit of any of it.
who live in Ohio.
Right.
So that's as simplified as I can make it in an abbreviated version.
Well, that was the abbreviated version?
There are lots of twists and turns and a lot of, there's a lot of technical pieces to
Real
that whole
quick,
school
quickly,
funding.
talk about the amount of money then, that where the cash was paid and what we didn't receive, had it gone under.
usual way.
Yeah.
We probably haven't
I-
taken that hit yet.
I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head. I mean,
It's about 9.5 million, I think, that they're accruing annually.
Right.
Right.
Sharing.
And 65% of that's coming from city property tax.
But they did issue debt about a year ago.
yes.
And we did receive the share on that debt.
We did, and it was
Portion of the
about
building
$8.5
costs.
million.
Right.
And that's what we're using to build the Liberty Bell expansion.
Which we had in the past for any other opportunity where debt was issued for a county school.
Right. In fact, back in 2007, we received about $47 million from a big building program
Yes.
out in the county.
And that addressed needs at Science Hill, and
Oh,
addressed
Fairmont.
needs
Helped
at
us a lot.
Fairmont, right.
Now,
But we're paying for it in our county taxes.
yes. Now, I would point out, for what it's worth, and it's kind of tangent to this whole conversation, every student that lives within the corporate limits is also a county resident, and they can attend a non-city school within Washington County without paying any fees. They're entitled, if someone wants to go to the new Boones Creek School and they live in the city limits, they can do that tuition-free. So that, playing the devil's advocate, that's kind of the flip side of that. Yes, sir.
But not vice versa. Sorry, Bob.
That's okay.
That was the perplexing look on my face that you saw, because that,
We got to straighten it out.
oh
So
yeah, it's
now you
crystal
know.
clear now what it is, but what to do about it is
the next
something else.
question.
Or whether to do anything about it.
Right.
That's the head scratcher.
The next section is on local revenue. We had quite a bit of discussion. We had a TML District 1 meeting today in Greenville, and this was one of the big topics. But with the internet sales tax ruling from Supreme Court back in the summer, there's an opportunity there for some additional revenue. Now, we all know this is not a new tax. I mean, your long-standing rules in Tennessee, you're supposed to have been paying this tax. Started out with like sales catalogs when you bought from Sears and Roebuck, but and there's another part of this that Tasser has done a study, and as part of their study on the use of this tax, we do agree that this new funding that the state's going to get should be spent on education. The example that kind of brought some things home today was the state says it costs this much for education, and they fund on average ballpark about 65% of that. Reality education is costing this much, so you got the 65% over here, and you got this big gap on the actuality of what it's really costing. The state really needs to put some more money into K-12 education. But that will be a major topic within the legislature and how they deal with that. And also, we got a little bit into discussion of, if you recall, with the gas tax that was passed a couple of years ago, in our conservative no-tax legislature of not wanting to balance things out from their perspective, they had to lower taxes somewhere else. So there is a concern among cities, myself included, and I think we would agree that we keep lowering our taxes in Tennessee. We're already, I think we're the lowest tax state out there, but there's going to come a day of reckoning. And Pete was here in the early 2000s when the state of Tennessee could not balance its budget. They could not balance it. And they had to balance it, they took money away from cities to balance the state budget. That was, and it took us a period of time to get that, a couple of years to start getting that money back. We never got reimbursed for what we lost, but they did restore the funding to the funding level. But I guess I'm just saying that there will be a day in the future, and hopefully many, many years from now, but I strongly suspect there will come a time when the state of Tennessee can again not balance its budget. So we hope that they'll do that.
Well, to some extent, that's happening now because the tax cuts that have taken place at the state level are really impacting the local level.
I would
Like the whole tax.
I would suggest to you that there's very little that the state does to generate revenue. The cities and the local governments, the cities and the counties generate the vast majority of all revenues that the state collects. I mean, sales tax, gas tax, liquor tax, motel tax, business tax, excise tax, franchise fees. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, it's basically cities and counties are a creation of the state. We are a subset of the state, and we're kind of the machine that makes it all happen. So I guess to get us back on track, what we're really getting, what Bob's getting to here is the Supreme Court has ruled on the online sales tax and that it is appropriate for those states who have met certain criteria to begin collecting online or sales tax for online purchases. It's a matter now of the state legislature having to take action to start the collection, and we're encouraging them to begin collection of the online sales tax. So, next item. Thank you, sir.
Regarding local revenue, though, to replace some of the revenue that cities have lost, namely the hall income tax, we have several things we're proposing. Most of these were included last year. One is to raise or eliminate the single article sales tax cap, which applies to local option sales tax. The local options only applied for cities, it only applied for the first $1,600. So that, and at 2.75%, that equates to $44. So for a car, if you buy a used 2005 car of some sort for $2,000, you're going to pay $1,600. If you buy a new Porsche at $100,000, you pay $1,600 for that same car. For appliances and for other major ticket items, we're asking them to allow us to bump that up to give us some more revenue. We're also looking at a local option restaurant privilege tax up to 2%. This is currently allowed in Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, and Gatlinburg. Also, if you go to Bristol, Virginia, you may not be aware of it, but you are paying a meals tax. And you pay more sales tax on meals in Bristol, Virginia than you do in Bristol, Tennessee, even though most people don't know that. We're also asking for a local option tax for tobacco products. This would give some more revenue, and it would also help send an anti-smoking message. And again, I just point out these are local options. We're just asking the state to give us the opportunity. It would require a referendum to actually do that.
So Sevierville, Gatlinburg, and Pigeon Forge went to the state and they allowed them to do it already?
That is correct.
Okay.
But is that 2% they charge? Do you know what it is, Bob?
I'm not sure what theirs is. I want to
If you'll keep talking, I'll ask Rusty and see if I can get an answer real
It
quick.
says up to 2% is what's written in here,
Okay.
but I don't know if they've.
Well, that was our
pulled the full-
recommendation, was up to
full amount.
2%.
I think it is 2%.
Well, this one's been in here several years. It regards trustee fees. The state collects sales tax, and they collect our local option sales tax. They charge us 1.125% of the total, but they're collecting the tax, they're auditing the tax, they're making sure people are paying. I mean, they do a tremendous amount of work for us to get that. Well, that money in turn goes to the counties. The counties charge us 1% to write us a check to give us our money. Pretty good deal.
Good deal.
We're losing between the city and the schools in Washington, Johnson City schools, we're losing about $400,000 a year to get, I don't know, 24 checks. So anyway, that's been out there, and that's another one of those issues. It's going to be highly contentious in the legislature, but we just really, to me, it's a matter of fairness, and so that's still in there. Our next area is public safety. There's currently approximately 35 prescribers that prescribe Suboxone and related type drugs in Sullivan County, and about 65 in Washington County. We're asking the legislature to require Suboxone clinics to obtain certificates of need, similar to methadone clinics. We're also asking them to expand the second-degree murder statute to hold an individual criminally responsible for illegally distributing any scheduled drug that, if consumed with any other scheduled drug, would result in the proximate cause of death in the user. It's just, this really came from the district attorney's office in Sullivan County. It's another attempt just to try to kind of emphasize the severity of the drug problem we're having right now. We're also asking for more spending in the state budget for drug education and prevention, and for law enforcement to investigate and prosecute drug crimes, and for tightening regulations for pain clinic facilities and Suboxone clinics.
There were 4 Suboxone clinics in my area of where our clinic is, and so there might be 2 less now because we bought the building beside us and they have moved out of there. So I don't know if they opened somewhere else or not, but regulation would be a wonderful thing for these clinics.
I think so. I totally agree. Drug trafficking and seizures. We oppose any legislation that would restrict the local government's ability to seize assets related to drug trafficking and DUI arrest. We also request authority to prohibit smoking within a set number of feet from public facility entrances, public venues, and parks. The last category was public transportation, and this has been one that's been in here for as long as I can remember, but we're trying to promote passenger rail service and even more freight service to get vehicles off the road. This one calls for establishing a new Department of Rail and Public Transportation, similar to what the state of Virginia has done, and to cooperate with their area to look at extending rail service down 81 to Knoxville and Chattanooga. There's a study currently going on looking at extending rail service from Roanoke to Bristol. And from their comments that I've gotten, that's looking very favorable. With that, it'll take a few years to get it, but that's looking favorable as far as getting approval.
Let me just add one comment. I've attended one meeting, and there's been a kind of an informal group who have been meeting on this. Mayor Firerobin in Bristol is really trying to get a formal collaborative group along the corridor route that's being proposed, so that the cities who would be impacted in a very positive way I think the big ask initially is going to be for some funding to complete a study for this corridor. So we'll see after the first of the year a more formal group that's going to try to drive this.
So this is our policy. All three cities are asked to adopt this. Bristol approved it Tuesday night. Kingsport will, I think, they will do it at their next meeting. So it's a collaborative effort of all three cities, and be happy to answer any more questions, and we would ask for your approval of this. There will be, we've historically have done a joint meeting between the three cities and our legislators. For many years, we would rotate it between the three cities. Last year, we decided to do something different, and we went to Nashville. We're planning a similar meeting this year. The date's up in the air because with a new governor coming in, there's a lot of unknowns as to the timing of events. But we will be getting more information out to you on that. And if you don't have any questions, we would just ask for your approval.
So nothing, our representatives wouldn't hear any of this. Now, many of them are repeat items that we've had on for a number of years, but they wouldn't be hearing anything until we go to Nashville in late January or early February.
Probably, it's looking more like it's going to be February this year. But
I would recommend your approval of this unless you have changes to be made. Secondarily, with a new governor coming on board, there's usually a recess after every election in the legislature, which happens every 2 years, the governor's every 4 years, to reorganize. So preliminarily, what we do know now, they will convene on January the 8th, and they will elect officers for both houses of the legislature, do some housekeeping, make committee assignments, and then they will adjourn for 2 weeks. That allows people to move offices, to get organized, whatnot. Then they will come back on January the 18th, which is a Friday. The inauguration is Saturday the 19th. There's a feeling they may adjourn again after the inauguration for a week or so and not get settled in to really start doing business until the first week of February. Now, that's really tentative at this point. I asked the TML folks today if they had any newer information than what I've had for a week or so. They didn't. I would suggest that we get this to our legislators long before the 1st of February. There's going to be a bill filing deadline probably real early in February. There traditionally always has been, and there traditionally for the last 4 years anyway, has been a limit on the number of bills any legislator can file. So I would suggest that once the Tri-Cities get this packet together, that we get with our legislators and get them this information as early as we can to give them ample opportunity to know what the Tri-Cities are thinking and what we're doing. And then once they get settled in, we could go to Nashville, meet with them in Nashville, and see how things are going, check in, see if there's any adjustments that need to be or can be made one way or the other. I've got Beth working on setting up a meeting with Representatives Hill and Van Huss and Senator Crow, hopefully before December the 21st, fourth Christmas break, to where they could come in and we could spend an hour, 90 minutes, whatever, just getting caught up. We haven't met with them as a group before, to give everybody a chance to meet with them, put names with faces, and kind of settle in, and this would probably be a good topic of conversation at that point as well.
I think that would be good. I really would like to see, I mean, we have a new commission we need to introduce to them, and you know, how during the session, I know Pete goes down there a lot, how we want to stay in touch with them and be supportive. They're our representatives and we need them. And I think the more we can, work on our relationship with them, be open and accessible to them as they're in town, I think the better. So maybe what we want to do, Pete, if we can get this meeting established and we want to give them this packet, I'd like to see us as a commission write a letter to them, pledging our support during the session, and just trying to take a little bit different tact of being a resource for them.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
I will move for approval of us to pass this.
I'll second.
all right, motion and a second. Any other discussion? Bob, thank you so much. Ms. Jane?
Thank you.
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Do you have 15 more minutes in you? The reason I ask this, an update is not on your agenda, but I have asked Ms. Jennings if she would put together the most current financial package that she could, understand, not questioning her or her staff's ability, but trying to get last year closed out and the auditors going, and the new budget entered and this and that. It's the first couple of months of the fiscal year, it's kind of hard to keep things real current. I've asked Janet to put it together. You've got a packet in front of you of financials, and Janet, if you could take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever we need.
Okay.
I just feel like it's really important that we give you all a financial update on a monthly basis. And while she's getting ready there, I will also mention that the second meeting in January, we'll have project updates from Water, Sewer, and Public Works. That there's a lot going on project-wise in those two departments, and we'll get you caught up on that at that point in time.
Is there ever a point when there's not a lot of projects in water and sewer?
No, sir.
I've been 2 years and I haven't ever seen it where it's not a lot of things going on.
Thankfully, they do it well. They can handle a large workload, and the complaints are minimal.
That's awesome.
The water runs in both directions very well.
We like it.
Yes, sir.
I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my staff. Many of you probably don't know, but we lost 3 of our staff accountants during the last fiscal year, so we actually closed the books with 40% of the accounting staff, which is a huge feat. So Sarah Roberts and Christy Ward have worked tirelessly to get the books closed and to answer auditor questions. And when the auditors would say, "Who does this?" they said, "Well, that person's gone, but I'll try to help you." We lost 1 person to the county, which was a huge opportunity for her. And I told Mitch he was very lucky to get her. So I'm happy for the county for that, because we groomed her and she was able to move on up. Another one we lost to schools, and again, we groomed her and she's moved on to schools and doing a great job for them. Another one just wanted to get closer to her children in Kingsport, so can't fault her for that. But we have 3 new ladies downstairs. I have high hopes for them. They're very ambitious and very eager to learn, and they're catching on quickly. So I appreciate your patience and Pete and Bob's patience as we've worked through this. We're not quite caught up, but their goal is by January we should be caught up. So thank you, Sarah, Christie, and then our new folks that are eager to go. I thought maybe the best indication for you to see how we ended 2018, and I'm going to cover that quickly, because we've not really said a lot about fiscal year 2018, and the auditors will have about another month, and then we'll have financials. We'll have audited financials. The general fund has about $22 million in cash. I have $20 million of that invested. So when you see your investment earnings of nearly $300,000, we're trying to make that money work in this low interest rate environment. So we're trying to help in that way. Schools had $6.6 million at year end. Water sewer had about $20.7 million. Now I include them on this list because what you're going to start seeing over the next year or so is that balance come down. That has built up and built up and built up, and they will be doing some cash-funded projects over the next little bit. So don't be surprised if Tom doesn't come before you and say, we're going to cash fund this. That's a pretty high balance for water sewer, so we're going to have some opportunities there. We're going to also issue some bonds for him, but not nearly as much as we ordinarily would. Solid waste had $8 million. Stormwater had $1.6 million, and you often see the ability there to cash fund some stormwater mitigation improvements. The insurance fund is extremely healthy. We are self-funded on our health insurance as well as workers' comp and our liability. Of course, the largest part of this is health insurance, and that balance was over $12 million at year end, with the remainder of that in workers' comp and liability. I thought I would mention the PEP debt service fund at $1.6 million because when I started work here in early 2001, it was often that we would be running a deficit in that fund. So, through some debt refunding over the years and through some more conservative forecasting, we've been able to keep a positive balance in that PEP debt service fund. And as you know, our most recent issues have been to replace roofs and do some things like that, parking lots and so forth. And you'll see some more capital projects come forth on PEP as time goes by. As far as fund balance, now this is not cash necessarily. In the governmental funds, which are general fund and schools, you'll see it come close to cash, but it's not exactly cash because this fund balance takes into consideration all of your receivables as well as your payables and your cash. So it's not exactly the same, but fund balance at the end of the year for general fund was $26.9 million. About $13 million or so of that is our rainy day fund, and you'll see a breakdown on that in just a moment. Schools had 6.2 in fund balance, water sewer $122.6 million. Now you ask, why is that so far different from the cash balance? That's because about $100 million of the water sewer fund balance is actually underground. It's invested in capital assets, so you can see the value of what we do across the city as far as our water sewer system. Solid waste also $14.7 million. A good part of that is in our solid waste assets. Stormwater $10 million. Now you saw that our cash balance was $1.6 million. Again, over $8 million of the $10 million is actually invested in stormwater projects, one of which is Founders Park. We spent $6 million in the downtown area for capital.
Janet, on our rainy day fund at $13 million, is that a good number, or should we be trying to get that up?
That's 2 months of operating, which that is consistent with the guidelines that are suggested. We actually have more than that, but you'll see that in just a moment. The insurance fund balance is $12.3 million. Here is the breakdown on the general fund balance of $26.9 million. There you see the rainy day fund of a little over $13 million. And then we have some donated monies and so forth that we've set aside over the years, earmarked for the seniors and for public safety and so forth. In the committed category, on the general fund balance sheet, you see a commitment for economic development. It's monies that are earmarked for economic development. Those monies are generated from the former MedTech Park Fund. Since those properties have all been sold, we continue to put the property taxes that are collected from that area into this economic development reserve. So you're able to use those each year to fund some capital projects, and you do that during your budget process.
All the property taxes in that
MedTech
corridor
Park,
go in there?
all the MedTech Park corridor property taxes. You see the,
Just not to dispute you, that's just in MedTech Park.
MedTech Park.
Not the whole corridor from
Right, yes,
North
sorry about
Johnson
that.
City to South Johnson City. Just
No, just
MedTech
the
Park
hill.
there
Right.
at
Yeah.
State of Franklin and Franklin Woods and all that in there, yes.
Yes. The 2% hotel occupancy tax, the increase that was adopted a few years ago, that goes into a reserve. The major expenditure out of there right now is the debt on the Fine Arts Center. We still have a positive balance right at the end of June of $200,000. We also are required to put aside some monies for leave time that employees have earned, but we've not yet paid, because if they leave, we have to pay it. We're obligated to pay
Leaves at
that.
once.
So you see that assignment there. And these are categories that are required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, so these are not things we just made up. So they have a meaning, those categories do. Unassigned is, at the end of the year, was $7.4 million. Now, what we have to use that unassigned money for is to kind of cover us through when, and you'll see in just a minute when I cover September real quickly, July, August, September, we don't receive hardly any property tax money. That's primarily collected, in October, November, December, some in January, February, March. But after that, it just really trails off. So we have to use that cushion to carry us for a few months. So that's a breakdown of the general fund balance. I thought it might be helpful to see how some of the major funds finished out the year as far as just the surplus or deficit for the year. The general fund, we had a surplus of $1.5 million, which was a $2.5 million favorable swing from where we were budgeted. Now, the majority of that was in lower expenditures, where the departments, they may have had open positions, they may not have had to spend some of the monies they thought they were going to have to spend. We may have deferred some other small projects within the departments. Our revenues were also up $1 million. We had some good local sales tax experience, but you're also going to see in a minute that we had really good experience on property tax collections. Schools were up $400,000, which was a $1 million favorable swing for them. Water, sewer, solid waste, stormwater, they all posted positive results. Some of that was invested in capital. The insurance fund, I wouldn't be very concerned. You might be surprised to hear a finance director say, don't be terribly concerned at that dip. We have built that fund balance up and built it and built it and built it to the tune of over $12 million. We have 6 or 7 months of cushion in that fund. So,
But I think this year, Janet, I was looking at the numbers, that we, in real time, we had more claims than we had premiums come in for this year, so we had a deficit this year, but we've got plenty of cushion.
We do. We have plenty of cushion. And you're going to have those instances where you have some major health events that occur. You're going to have several years where you don't, and where you build those monies up. So, you don't want to overreact to those, but we will monitor that progress over time and see how that.
Janet, that $1.1 million deficit is not entirely health insurance, is it?
It's
That's
mostly
liability
yes.
and workers' comp
Right, but
included.
it's mostly health.
Right.
Yep.
But I just want to make sure that's, it's everything.
Wait a
in
minute.
insurance.
Wait,
Yeah.
I believe that may have been just health insurance, because I have the financials in here. So,
Okay.
yes. Yes, the city and schools.
Unfortunately, they had a worse. They had they were dependent on fund balance more so than we were last fiscal year.
But 10 years ago, it was that way every year until we started doing some
For the
really
benefit
good
of the now,
things. Yeah.
the health insurance numbers are like this.
Right.
When they're doing real good, we may be doing real bad, and then it'll flip. I mean, there is none of this with health insurance cost, is there, Dr. Callahan?
No, you got that right, yeah.
But I think some of the actions the city and the schools took several years ago
Definitely.
have
15 years ago,
created
we
more
were-
stability, a smoother line.
Right, we were almost
We were dying.
hand to mouth 15 years ago, and with the wellness program, the diabetes program, putting in the employee clinic, we've really stabilized and control our costs. We have not raised premiums for our employees in 4 years now, and I would just about bet that there are very few employers in the city of Johnson City that can make that claim. We've done a really good job of communicating with our employees and working with our employees to control costs. They really do understand that any money that we can save there is money that we can use to better their work environment or better their take-home pay. So everybody's working very well together.
As you've heard before, property tax makes up 40% of our general fund budget, so obviously it's a primary focus for us during the year. The collections are a primary focus for me and my department. We were $831,000 better than the prior year on property tax collections. Now, $336,000 of that was actually picked up in the budget, but we beat the budget by $495,000. So as far as collection rate, for what we billed during the fiscal year, we collected almost 98%. That was a slight improvement over the prior year collection. So we were at 97.93. The prior year, we were at 97.72.
Janet, is that because you're collecting it? That's because people owe more property tax?
No,
as
it's a
much, or is it
percentage of
just
the
a percentage?
billing.
So
Percentage of the
you're
bill.
not carrying as much delinquency?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is that common for cities our size that you'd have 98% collections?
We have some pretty aggressive communication, not aggressive as in the tone, but we send out quarterly notices. However, you will also see that change with the economy. People, economy's better, people, they're better at paying their property tax bill. So although we like to think 100% of it's our efforts, there are a lot of things that come into play, but 98% is a very, very good collection rate. You'd expect to see, 95 to 98.
They can pay it on a credit card, can't they?
Yes, they can
Yeah.
pay by credit card.
So they-
This is the breakdown. I won't get into too much detail on this, but you can see the 97.93 and the 97.72 at the end of the fiscal year. Out of 35.5 million, we only had a little over 700,000 we had not collected. We'll go another several months, and then in March we will turn the 17s over to the clerk and master for collection. So,
That's a fire truck.
yeah. Sales tax is 24% of the budget. So again, you're seeing a pretty major revenue player in the general fund. Our sales tax increased by $369,000, which is 1 3/4% over the prior year. Our best month was November. Our worst month was December. So I don't know if that means, but we can speculate.
Wait, how are you
lot of things.
measuring worst?
For the year, percentage,
percentage
year over
increase
year.
over the year to year?
for the month.
For the month, okay.
For the month.
Okay. So it can still be a hefty amount of collections, just didn't have the growth you would like to have seen in comparison to the previous year.
Well, the months are going like that. We had several down months, but we had several months that were just really high. So we do have some tools now available through the state that we can do more statistical analysis from year to year. So you may see some of that come forward. I can't share proprietary information, but I do have some more tools available now. Just hitting on a few other areas, building-related permits were flat year to year. We kind of look at that as, an indication of where property, the activity goes. So I thought that was interesting. The whole income tax revenues were down $112,000. State sales tax was up $148,000. I think the state as a whole has had some good experience. I wanted to mention telecommunication tax being up because I need to go back, and I meant to mention in that detailed slide, you see state assessed properties. The billing on that went down $82,000. Our collections are down about $82,000. What the state did was pass legislation that changed the way they tax the telecommunication companies. So we lost money in that legislation. However, they passed legislation that imposed a privilege tax on those same entities. So that's why you see telecommunication tax go way up. I mean, that used to be a very, very, very small revenue source for us, and so we're seeing that. So it appears we've more than offset our loss.
Y'all done any analysis on the first one up there about building?
The building
Permits,
permits.
Not a detailed analysis at this time. No, ma'am, we haven't.
Looked at ourselves compared to our sister cities and counties? And how they're doing with it?
Usually on a quarterly basis, I'll do a quick comparison of growth or decline in comparing the Tri-Cities. There's some difference, but it's not huge. What appears to be happening is there's probably a bigger change in growth rate between cities and counties than there are cities to cities, is typically what I'm seeing. And the other thing I would point out off of that slide was the decline in the hall income tax was expected. I mean, with the stock market doing what it's done in the last 2 or 3 years, our hall income tax should be growing by leaps and bounds, but the state has passed legislation that phases that out, and it goes away in 21 or 20. Okay, so it's on its way out, and based on where we collected a historical average, the loss of the hall income tax will cost us somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million a year. I'm detecting something towards that other look again.
I'm going to stop looking at you.
I have 3 slides for the first quarter of this year. There are a lot of sensational things happening out and about, but as far as the financials, we're holding our own. Everything looks positive. But we haven't, as of the end of September, we had not billed property taxes. So I don't have anything to report for our major revenue source. I will share with you a little snippet on sales tax. However, we only have a couple of months of sales tax in, so those lag. You'll see how the cash balances have changed. That's because our biggest revenue source was not being received during the first 3 months of the year. So general fund, I still have the $20 million invested, but you can see that our, cash in the bank, our share of the bank account in the general fund has diminished. That has come back, of course, because we're right in the middle of property tax season right now. So get out and pay your property taxes if you haven't. Schools cash balance has also decreased because, through those summer months, they're not getting their BEP funding, so you'll see their balance come back, and then they'll start getting some county property tax monies. So they have a little dip as well. The other funds, water, sewer, solid waste, stormwater insurance, PEP, those cash balances really haven't changed a lot. They're just holding their own because they're not as cyclical as general fund tends to be. Just a little comment on sales tax. So far, we are up 1.75% over the previous year. That's encouraging. It does lag 2 months, so hopefully next time I can report a full 3 months for you. We are just a little bit short of where we were budgeted, but we'll see where the Black Friday and Christmas bring us. This is a little more detail on the sales tax through 2 months. You can see that for the month of August, we were up almost 4%, so we were actually down a little bit in July. Year-to-date, 1.75%, and there's where you see the softness as compared to budget. So all the funds are holding their own, and I'm encouraged. So,
just as a side note, and I didn't have a chance to tell you this, in talking to some of the other managers whenever we were at TCMA, several cities are reporting some yet to be fully understood sales tax reports. Some people were way up, other people were way down, and there didn't seem to be any consistency or rhyme and reason to the fluctuations. So ordinarily, I'd probably be concerned about those numbers, but based on the reporting that I'm hearing from others across the state, I don't know what's going on, but something the distribution and reporting of sales taxes there's something a little different to that right now. So another couple of months, I think it'll calm down and we'll get a truer reflection of where we stand.
Even last year, like the November, December, it's like one month was way down, one was way up, and there are these wide swings. So hoping that it just normalizes over the period.
And the other piece of that, the voluntary payment of online sales taxes and that redistribution to local governments, I'm not sure I really understand if that happens on a fairly smooth basis or if they're distributing them every other month or how that's going. I mean, that's a piece several of us are still trying to figure out on how that's working. The good news is they are collecting on a voluntary basis and they are redistributing it. We just need to understand the distribution method a little better.
Bad news is there's a lot of money out there that's not being collected.
That's the
and
real bad
distributed.
news, yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. And I would, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I would remind everyone, it is your legal obligation to report your online sales and to pay the state of Tennessee your sales tax. I would highly encourage everyone to do so because by not doing so denies you and your neighbors of quality services that we are dependent upon that sales taxes to deliver with.
And speech to me.
Good speech.
Yeah, that was good.
Happy to address any questions if
questions?
you have them, or I can.
Very good.
Get back to
Thank
you
you
later.
so much. Thank you. All right, commissioners, any words from our peanut gallery here? Anything going on? Commissioner Vice Mayor Wise? Anything?
Mayor Tamita is not here anymore. I will pick up his shop local. That's where we get, so if y'all going out to shop for Christmas, shop local here, don't buy it online. You can look for prices and see if you can match them here. Best Buy, not advertising, but they like to, whatever's advertised out there, they'll match it in the store. So go to Best Buy for your appliances and tell them about your online, what you were going to purchase and get it here instead, so.
That's good advice. Thank you. Commissioner Hunter, are you ready to, you going to stay with us?
I think I might say a little.
This is your trial run?
Absolutely, thank you. I'm excited.
Any comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, we
Wait.
have,
Oh, we got one over here.
okay, good.
Just a couple of quick reminders. The National Weather Service is still making best guesses for what weather we may incur over the weekend. And I've seen everything from rain and perhaps a quarter of an inch of ice up to 3 to 6 inches of snow occurring between Saturday afternoon and Monday morning. So based on that, I think we can count on some slick roads sometime Sunday. So I would encourage everyone, get out Friday and Saturday and go to the grocery store, get your hair done, do your Christmas shopping. Stop and get some snow tires perhaps, whatever. And just be prepared for bad weather on Sunday and Monday. Hopefully, we don't have to deal with this, but just to remind everybody, be prepared, get your water, be prepared for a heavy, wet snow, and not wishing Bright Ridge any bad luck. Jeff, I'm sorry for jinxing you, but there could be power outages associated if you have heavy icing on electric lines, so be prepared for all those types of things. And having said all that, ETSU will be playing basketball at home Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
In the storm.
And
Science Hill has
Science
round
Hill's-
ball in the old gym on tomorrow
Friday and
night,
Saturday.
7 and 8:30. So we've got girls and boys in the old gym
I
playing.
understand they're wearing
throwback-
vintage.
some throwback uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
neat
Larry
to go.
Bird shorts.
I don't know if it's that bad. I don't know if it's that bad, but it's gonna be.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, very good. And we have plenty of snow product, right?
We have plenty of snow removal equipment and salt. So we are prepared, and Janet, generate all the revenue you can because it gets expensive when we start moving snow.
Anything else?
No, ma'am, thank you.
All right, meeting adjourned.